I just can't get this key to work. Why won't it work? Oh, it's the key to my car. What's going on, everybody? S.L.B coming at you with another video review. And I'm looking at the camera, so you know what that means. It means I'm wearing clean underwear. No, it means I'm doing another comic book review. This time we're taking a look at one of my favorite comic books. I would put it in the top 5. We are taking a look at Locke and Key. Quick shout out to the Locke and Key Unlocked podcast. They've been doing a podcast wrapping up each trade and then they're going over episode by episode. I highly recommend you listen to them. They've introduced me to some things from this book that I missed. So I highly recommend you guys give them a listen. Link will be in the description down below there somewhere. Why am I doing this? You may ask yourself. Well, a new show came out on Netflix. And like I said, Locke and Key is one of my favorite books, series. And before the TV show came out, I was going to reread the first trade. Unfortunately, I couldn't put it down. So then I read the second one. And I still couldn't stop. And then I read the third one, and I couldn't stop. So then I did the fourth. Guess what? Couldn't stop. Then I said screw it and just read everything. Whew, those are heavy. So for this episode, let's take a dive into the 6-volume Locke and Key series. And like always, we will go over issue 1 and then go over a review of everything. And that's how we end this part of the video. Transition. So Locke and Key was published from 2008 to 2013 by IDW. It was written by Joe Hill, art by Gabriel Rodriguez, colors by Jay Photos, letters by Robbie Robbins. So we get into the first issue. We are introduced with a door. A book called Locke and Key. The first thing you see is a door, doors and locks. Who'da thunk? And then we're introduced to two people, Sam Lesser and Al Grubb. And we see Sam and Al knocking on said door, and then we're introduced to Mrs. Nina Locke. And as Al and Sam are greeting themselves to Mrs. Locke, we can tell that they're up to no good because Al has a knife and Sam has a gun. And now you know that shit's about to go down. Because then we then see that there are 2 dead bodies in the bed of a pickup truck that Sam and Al borrowed. And then we meet the oldest of the Locke siblings, Tyler Locke, looking down at a pond, looking all emo and mopey. And as he's looking down, he's wishing he was somewhere else. Then we meet the youngest of the Locke tribe, Bodhi, as he pops his head out of the pond saying he caught a turtle and it pooped in his hand. The final sibling, the middle child, Kinsey, pops her head in, walks up to Tyler and Bodhi, mainly Tyler. As Tyler explains to Kinsey what happened with Bodhi, she explains to him, cool, you can go right on experiencing that and help paint at the same time. Dad says break is over. As the children make their way back to the house, we then meet the father of the Locke family, Rendell, being confronted by Sam and Al as they're hiding to the side. That was then. Now in the present day, we see Tyler. And Tyler is standing at a funeral looking at a red urn. Cut away to the end of a hallway, we see Tyler sitting on a bench and a couple people trying to console him. And after those 2 people try to help Tyler go through his misery, we are then introduced to Uncle Duncan, who Tyler just loses it and Duncan just ends up hugging him and Tyler is just crying into his arms. And after that we go back to the past when Rendell and Sam are in this confrontation and the kids are making their way back to the house. And as the kids approach the house, you hear a gunshot. Well, not really hear, I mean you see it written out, bang, or something like that. And then you see Tyler peeking through the window and Sam holding the gun covered in blood. You get a quick shot of Sam looking for Tyler with Kinsey and Bodhi hiding on the roof, Kinsey holding Bodhi's mouth shut. And then we flash forward again to Duncan and Tyler in a moving van, and the rest of the Locke family are behind them, and they're driving to a new place to live. Then we are introduced to one of the main characters of this story. Bear with me on this. We are introduced to Key House. We cut to another flashback of Tyler and Sam fighting, with Tyler eventually winning in the end. Tyler escapes this nightmare by trying to crawl out of a door on the floor, only to see him struggle and finally open it, realizing that his father is on this door dead. Al confronts Tyler, but only to end up meeting his fate with an axe to the back of the head, provided by none other than Nina Locke, the mother. Cut back to present day, and Tyler and Kinsey are conversing. Kinsey confesses to Tyler that Tyler was his father's favorite. But Tyler kind of turns that around by saying, whatever I was to him, I wasn't worth it. Tyler then asks Kinsey where Bodhi is, and she says he went to explore the house. Bodhi, being the young and adventurous kid that he is, exploring this house, finds a strange-looking key.
Dum 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 dum.
We then see that Sam Lesser survived the encounter and he's being detained in a juvenile detention center. And then we see him talking to the water in the sink. It'll make sense. Just read the book. We then cut to another door. We see a click, and we see Bodhi poke his head out the door. Now here's where the weird shit starts. Next thing you know, Bodhi walks through the door, turns into a ghost, turns around, sees his body lying on the floor. He panics, flies back through the door, then he wakes up and closes the door. And that was issue 1. Now let's get into the review of the whole series. That was a lot to take in for one issue. And that kind of goes for every book in this series, is there's a lot of information. And you're given all this information, and you read and read and read, and you have so many questions, and those questions get answered towards the end of the book, and it just pulls you in and keeps you wondering and guessing. That's what I think makes a good writer. Speaking of writers, let's talk about Joe Hill for a second. Do you not know who Joe Hill is? Well, Joe Hill is the son of legendary writer Stephen King. And let me just say, the apple did not fall far from the tree. I mean, it did fall off the tree. It fell far enough to kind of differentiate himself from his famous father. One of the aspects that this book conveys very well in both writing and in art is the grieving process when someone loses a loved one. If you really think about this series, this is the kids dealing with the 5 stages of grief. You have denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. This book is more than just finding the key of the week and just going on an adventure. Throughout this whole story, the kids and the mother are all dealing with this death of Rendell Locke, the father. And it isn't just Joe Hill's writing that conveys this very well. Gabriel Rodriguez does a phenomenal job of showing you what depression kind of looks like in a certain way. The guys in the Lock and Key Unlocked podcast brought this up, and I never realized this before, but when Tyler is sitting at the funeral in that hallway, he's just prone. He's just sitting there in the same position while people are moving around him and things are happening around him. And if you've ever dealt with depression, you kind of relate to this, because that's kind of what it feels like. You're just frozen in time. And yes, things are going on around you, but you just can't really react to it. And speaking of Gabriel Rodriguez, the character designs of the whole Locke family, Zach, Rufus, the keys, the house, everything in this series has a cartoony look to it, but yet still has a real world reconnaissance to it. Yay, big word. And I think Rodriguez's background in architecture really helps, because as I've said before, even the house is a character to this series. The house, as well as the keys, the way that Gabriel Rodriguez portrays them, feel more than just your standard MacGuffin that you have to find. I kind of want to go off path for just 1 second, kind of steer away from the review for just 1 second, to kind of show you what I'm talking about. When I say the keys have a certain feel to them, these designs are so beautiful. If we look at Trade Paperback Volume 2, and this goes for every cover of every trade, they're adorned by the keys that play integral parts to the inner story. The designs are so beautiful that I just want to reach in and grab them so I can have a copy of my own. Sorry for the stumble. Like, if you look really closely at the head key here, you can tell that there's little separations of the brain. It looks like it just popped out of a medical journal. And if you look at Volume 4, it's got the music box key. And the music box key is done in a very elegant way that just makes you feel like you're listening to a symphony played through a music box. It kind of makes you dance and sway. Going back to the review now, Joe Hill and Gabriel Rodriguez did not knock on the Lovecraft door. They kicked it in and said, hey, how's it going on here? Like I said earlier, each volume gives you questions, and then it answers some questions, but it leaves you with a ton more. In a one-shot issue in the Head Games, we are introduced to Ellie Whedon, her son Rufus, and Ellie's mother. During this issue, we find that Ellie had hidden in her house a mason jar with what looks like a small version of the Lady in the Well, the gender swap key, and the echo key. And Ellie has no recollection of why those are in there. So you're sitting there asking yourself, how did it get in there? Who put them there? Whose memory of the Lady of the Well is that? Why is there a note attached to the echo key saying, Locke's Wellhouse, say my name. Why? Turns out you don't get those answers until way into Volume 5 Clockworks, which, by the way, is probably one of the best volumes in the series. And it isn't just the unanswered questions that give this series a Lovecraft feel. With the Shadow Key in Volume 3, Crown of Shadows, comes the ability to control a bevy of shadows. When they appear, it's not like your normal shadow, and they're not drawn just like a normal shadow. They have a fluidity to them, and it's almost water-like and gooey. And I have to gush over J. Photo's colors. Nothing in this story is bright and vibrant. There's even a Calvin and Hobbes-esque story, and even that is very dark and grim. And it's supposed to be in the daytime, and it's snowy, and it's still just, the birds aren't bright red, they're a soft and hardened red, almost maroon, or almost orange, I should say, not maroon. The blood and everything in it just, it's not bright, it's very grotesque. And Jay's colors mixed with Gabriel's art, they complement each other so much. And that beautiful combination of those two makes this whole series feel very disheartening, as I've said, because this whole series is about grief and the grieving process and coming to terms with death. Another good example of this is when any character enters the ghost store with the ghost key. When they're ghosts, they're not just solid white like Casper. They've got a fluidity to them, and they're not just bright white. They've got a bit of a, it's like their exposure's been brought down a little bit, and they're not solid white. They've got some pieces missing, which kind of makes it feel like they're not whole, even though they're completely dead. So for final thoughts for this whole series, this is seriously one of my favorite books. Why am I doing this? Because I'm trying to think of something. I could keep going on and on about how beautiful the art is, how great the story is. But I urge you, do yourself a favor. Pick up single issues, trades, hardcovers, whatever you... It's one thing to read it digitally, but Gabriel Rodriguez's art with J. Photo's colors is so much better in hand. I've said it before, but this time I cannot stress this enough. I mean, these covers are just beautiful. The interior is just breathtaking and gorgeous. And once you finish reading it, your grieving process has ended because you feel like you've gone through the same grieving process as the Locke family. But yet there are still more questions that need answers. Ooh. Before I finish this video, though, let me talk about the Netflix series. The Netflix series has come and gone. Series 1 has done. I binged it in 2 days. Would I recommend it? Yeah. You do not have to read the books to understand the TV show. The show does a great job of keeping the same tones and resonance as the books do. It's not a panel-for-shot retelling like, say, Watchmen. It's a great representation of the source material, like The Boys. So do yourself a favor. Read the books, watch the show. I can't recommend them. This is S.L.B, and this has been my review of the Locke and Key series. If you like this video, hit that like button, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. If you want to leave a comment in the comment section down below. Hit me up on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram. Links to everything will be in the description down below. This is S.L.B, and this has been my review of Locke and Key whole series. This is S.L.B saying, I'm going to take my key to my car and go get me some Chinese food. Oh, door's locked.